make sure that you do is every time you're doing something with the recruiting process, you need to make sure that you're signed into your College Fit Finder. And the reason why you want to do that is because as you go through this process, you're going to be finding out more information about schools. You might even take notes about certain things. You're going to have to keep track of all of the correspondence and other things that you're doing. So it's going to be really important that you're adding in all this information as you go through the process. So if I don't have this open and then something comes up, it may take me a while to open this up, and then all of a sudden I forget about what I needed to take notes on. So it is really important that you have this open and you're ready to go. Now, the first thing you want to make sure that you do before you kind of get started with the college search process is you want to make sure you have two conversations. The first conversation needs to be with a counselor. And, you know, the reason why you want to do that is because when you sit down with a counselor, they're going to go through a bunch of different information about the academic side of schools. They're going to help you understand what you're looking for academically and other parts depending on what you want to study and what your GPA and your test scores are. So it's really important to have that conversation before you get started so that they can help you identify the group of colleges that is going to best fit you so that you are more successful in this process. The next conversation you want to have is you want to have a conversation with a coach or a trainer. And the reason why you want to do that is because, you know, as a player, you may not want to have a conversation where someone's telling you, hey, you might not be able to play at this division or this division might be a better fit for you. But it's really important you have those conversations because let's just say I think I'm a Division I player and all I'm doing is putting Division I schools on my list. And then I come to find out my senior year that maybe that's a too high of a level for me or it's just not a good fit. And now all I've been trying to reach out to is Division I schools. Now I'm going to be in trouble. So it's really important that you have this conversation so your coach can kind of at least let you know, look, if you want to play at this level, here's what it's going to look like for you. You may not start as a freshman. You may have to redshirt. Whatever those different basic experiences will be at the different levels, it's important to know those before you start putting together things on your list. So again, two conversations, counselor, coach or trainer, so that we can help identify preferences of what we're looking for in a school. Now, as you go through and you have those conversations and you're starting to think about what you're looking for, it's important that you fill out your recruiting or your preference tab in College Fit Finder, not only because college coaches can search off of this information, but you also want to have this information done so that, let's just say one of your club coaches is about to hop on the phone with a coach and they don't know if you want to play a certain division or in a certain state or even a certain size of school, or maybe you're trying to study a certain major. And if I don't have this information filled out, it's going to be hard for your club coach to go in here and basically be able to help you. So really important that not only are you filling out all of this information for the college coaches, but also so that your club coaches can have an understanding of what you're looking for. The other thing is it's important to update these as you move forward with your process. And the reason why that is because if I have a bunch of things, like for example, I have Division I, but now after a couple of years, I don't want to play that division anymore. Maybe I wanted to play on the East Coast my freshman year and I haven't made changes. So basically college coaches that are looking through these preferences might be confused if they reach out to you and you're not interested in their school because you haven't been updating your preferences. So really important to update this information as you're going through. The other thing is when you go to the college page, you want it to be updated so that when you go to each specific college, you know what that fit is for you at each college. Because again, part of the fit score when I go to a college page is your preferences. So if I don't have those filled out or if I just put no preference all the way down, the number or fit of each school is just not going to be accurate. Now, the next thing is this part of the program I should really be living on. I should be doing on this part of the program multiple times a week, even multiple times a day if I'm really interested in playing college, because this is going to allow you to basically go through and start thinking about different things that you're looking for in a school. And the way that the program works is if I'm doing different searches, so for example, let's just say I go in and first time I searched off division, but now I don't want to do that anymore. Maybe I just want to search off my GPA and then maybe a couple different parts of the country. And then the next time around, maybe I search off of, a different type of major or a size or the cost of the school. So if I'm searching off of all of these different things, you're going to see a bunch of different schools show up each search. If I go in here every single time and basically put in the same search filters over and over, you might not be able to get a good look of schools that maybe you've never heard of because, again, you're doing the same search. So all the same schools are going to continue to come up. But if you continue to change what you're searching for on this program, you're going to start to see a bunch of schools that maybe you've never heard of that are a good fit for you. One thing I want to remind you is as you're putting in your filters, this score is your fit score. So based off my filters, it's saying that this school is a 92% fit for me. So really important that you're paying attention to that. It's not based off of you. So if it says like an 80, you can still go in there because it could still be a good fit for you. It just might not be a good fit based off the filters that you've put in. Now, one of the most important things about the college search process is to do the research. If I just go in and I'm putting schools on my list based off of the way their logo looks, or maybe I know that one of my friends is going to that school, so I should go to that school, I am not going to be as successful as if I'm going through looking at all the things about the school, reasons why I want to go to it, reasons why I don't want to go to it. And now one thing I'm going to tell you that you could possibly do with the program real quick. So once I go to a college page, let me just quickly show you something. Go back to your College Fit Finder. Go to your activity tab, because remember, this is correspondence, but at the same time, you could take notes and you could put it under each school. So if you're doing the research, you could literally take notes on that school, and then you can go back and look at that as you're going through this process. So for example, let's just say we're looking at, St. Lawrence. All I would have to do is just click on this plus sign, type in the school, and then now I really don't have to put in this information. I could just put in like, an evaluation, or really whatever. I'll just put in other. And then now I would just take notes about what I've learned about the school. Because if I do this from the start with every school and I save it, now when I go back in and I start to filter, the first thing you're going to see is that first correspondence you put in with all of the research that you've done. And now if you're finding out more information about the school and doing more research, you can just continue to add to that. And the reason why it's so important to do all this research is when you finally reach out to the coach, which is the next step, you want to make sure that you have information so you can tell them why you want to go to their school. So if I'm going through the college search process, really the most important thing I'm doing is trying to gather information of why this school is going to be a good fit for me. Now, if I'm starting to do the research and I realize this school is just not a good fit, it doesn't have the majors I want, maybe I look through some of the pictures, I go onto their website, and I just don't like the feel of it. Again, it's kind of hard to get a feel. I can do, virtual tours and things like that, but it's important that if you don't really want to put on your list, or if it just doesn't fit, just move on, and I can always come back to this school later to see, okay, maybe it does fit me. Maybe next year I find out some more things about the school, and now it really is a good fit. Now, the other thing you really want to do is you want to make sure that as you're going through and doing the research, that you're paying attention over here, because this is basically showing you a ton of different schools that could be a good fit for you based off the school you're looking at. So the program itself is going to allow you to find schools that maybe you've never heard of. So again, just go through, start doing the research of what you're looking for, and then just kind of glance over here, scroll up and down. It's like, well, I've never heard of this school. Let me check it out. But again, if I click on the title, it's just going to take me to that college page, and I can start doing the research to figure out, is this a good fit? And I know I keep talking about doing the research, but if I am not putting schools on my list that I know are a good fit for me, when it's all said and done and I have, no options or one option or really, less than 5 options, it's going to be because of my foundation, and I did not do a good job of building my list out with all types of schools. And again, when we're talking about your list now, some other things you should be thinking about are, you don't have to just put schools that are easy schools for you to get into. It should be a mix of everything. It should be a mix of schools that you know you can get into, schools that you may have a hard time making the team maybe, schools that you know you're going to be able to make the team. But if I have this whole different list of different schools and it's just going to be different fit for me, now I'm going to have a lot more options. So when schools start to fall off your list, because as you kind of do the research on these schools are going to fall off your list for tons of reasons. So if I am having all these schools on my list that are already a good fit, and then all of a sudden I start to learn more about the schools and they start to fall off my list, I'm still going to have a lot of options because I've made sure that I put a bunch of good schools on my list that fit me. I've done the research. And then also I'm starting with a decent sized list. So that way, if schools do fall off my list, I'm still going to have options at the end of the day. And that's the whole part of this process that you're looking to do, is you're looking to have options so you can make the decision. If I don't do a good job with just the college search part of it, I'm basically starting my process off really at a disadvantage. Because if I do a great job, just think of it like your foundation. You're building a really strong foundation so that you have all these schools. And now, no matter what, no matter how many schools fall off your list, or you find certain things out about the coach, or maybe the coach leaves, whatever it might be, you're still going to have options. And that's really what you want to have by the end of the search process, is lots of options, and then you can make your decision based off of what's best for you and your family. Now, that's pretty much it with the college search part of it. I'm going to turn it over to Jay. You know, Jay's has a little bit more information than me, so if there are any questions about the college search process, feel free to type those in. I can answer those now, or I can answer those when we finish. So feel free to kind of, if I missed something, or if you want me to go over something a little bit more, feel free to go ahead and type in those questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jay, but before I do that, I'm just going to introduce Jay. I'm going to talk about our partnership with Solutions for Tuition and kind of why we're doing these webinars. So, you know, Jay and I have been talking now for a couple years, and we have been deciding whether we should do a partnership. And the reason why we really decided that this is such a good fit for anyone that's working with College Fit Finder is because there's a ton of information that Jay is going to give you that's going to show you how to save money. And for me, you know, it's personal because I have student loans. I know a lot of people that have student loans. And I wish that, you know, before I got into, you know, taking out loans and all this kind of stuff, I wish I had the information Jay's about to give you, because I know for a fact I would have saved a ton of money. And again, I know that sounds a little corny because that's the title of the webinar, but it really is so important to listen to this information, because he's going to give you what you need to help yourself and make it so you're not paying full price for tuition. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jay, and he's going to take you through saving money on tuition. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you see my screen?
And I can see your screen.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jay Murray, and I'm the president of Solutions for Tuition. I started the company, almost 16 years ago, when I had 2 kids in college and 1 in high school. So I've sat in your seat, I've walked in your shoes, I've been there, and I survived. So there's good news. And hopefully I'm going to share a lot of that experience with you this evening. It's our great pleasure to work with College Fit Finder. It's just such an amazing tool. And if you use it, it will work. Some of the things that Jeff said are just so important when you're looking at colleges, that you consider the fit. That's why it's called College Fit Finder. You know, and the main thing is to get as many students over the finish line as we can, as far as, attending college, if that's your goal, and playing at college, if that's your goal, and hopefully getting college for the lowest possible price. And that's what we're going to talk about this evening, how every family can cut the cost of college. It's important when we start to make sure everybody is on the same page and understands what college costs today. It's more than when you, or if you're a student, when your parents went to school. The average public university is right around $22,000. The average public out of state, $38,000. The average private is around $50,000 a year, and many privates are $70,000, $75,000. That's sticker price, okay? One of the things that we're going to get into in a few minutes is how to go from sticker price to net price. You know, how can you start dropping that price? As far as inflation goes, most colleges are tracking 3% per year inflation, and that's been happening for about 3 or 4 years. But, you know, in 2008, we had double-digit increases per year. Now, college is pretty expensive at some of these schools, you know, $70,000, $75,000 a year. That's a lot of money. So we're going to talk about how to reduce that cost. A lot of your planning is going to depend on the age of your kids, because college goes up every year. Even if it's just 3% per year, it's still going up every year and really shows no sign of changing over the next several years. At some point, it'll either get so crazy expensive, or the demand will start to temper, and perhaps there'll be some cost reductions, but I really don't expect that. The younger your kids are, the more expensive it's going to be when they get there. But don't be fooled. Many universities are higher than the average. Here's some examples. All very familiar schools, all great schools, but their cost of attendance is higher than the average across the nation. This is one of my favorite sayings. And the reason that it's relevant is when we start comparing college costs between colleges, when we look at their websites, okay, to see how much they're quoting, where do they come up with that $30 or $40 or $50 or $70,000 a year number? Well, that's their cost of attendance. And the cost of attendance can include all of these things: tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, and personal expenses sufficient for the prudent student to live. If your student is not prudent in high school, don't expect that he or she is going to have a lifestyle change in college. Maybe a little bit, but probably not significant. But here's the point that I'd like to make is this can vary greatly from college to college, not just in the total price, but what they're quoting you. So some colleges are just going to publish tuition and fees and room and board. Then everything below that, you have to know to add in. Other colleges will publish everything on here, maybe even transportation expense. So it's important when you're looking at a college's website or any service that's displaying those cost numbers that you drill down a little bit and you understand, what are they actually quoting? Are they actually quoting the full true cost of attendance, or are they leaving some things out? So the reality is the costs are going up quickly. We know that. Many families have been challenged to save. 60% of students don't finish where they started. And this is huge. This is one of your big cost-saving strategies, is to make sure that your student is in love with the campus that they begin their freshman year at. Because if they are, they're going to graduate from that school. If they've done their investigation, if they've checked it out, and College Fit Finder is a great way to start that, to start not only looking at each individual school, but starting to answer some questions in general. Do I want a large school or a small school, or does it not matter? Do I want a school close to home or far away? When my kids were going to college, their college choice, I think, was predicated on how far away can I get from home. Lately, due to all the challenges that we're seeing due to COVID, many families are opting to move closer to home. Either kids want that or parents want that. So finding the right fit is just so important. And then 50% of students don't finish in 4 years, and it's not their fault. It's not because they're not studying. It's not because they're not applying themselves. This is a particular problem in the state university and college system. Okay, the average time for a 4-year degree is 5.25 years, if that makes any sense. The average time to completion for a bachelor's degree is 5.25 years. What does that tell you? Well, what it tells us is that it's very difficult for the students to get the sequence of classes in the order that they need because of budget cuts. So oftentimes they'll have to go an extra semester. And if they made a mistake in their freshman or sophomore year scheduling, they may have to go even longer. If they transferred, there's even more credits that are going to be lost. So, one of the things you'll hear me say is that there's a couple equalizers out there when we're looking at comparing a state university to a private college. Granted, many of these private colleges are double or more the cost, but many of them can be generous too. But one of the things they'll guarantee is we'll get your student out in 4 years if they come here because they have the resources. Are you concerned? I think that 68% of parents were worried about paying for college before COVID-19. So it's just something that it's difficult to understand. The colleges could lay the system bare and show you exactly, how to do what I'm about to show you, but they don't. So it's natural to be concerned, particularly if your family has been adversely affected, but it's also natural to be concerned because you don't have the information. You don't know what strategies you should be pursuing, and we're going to talk about that right now. So the first thing that you want to do is calculate an accurate cost projection for all of your kids. Start with sticker price. That's a great place to start, or maybe do two estimates. Here's an estimate for a state university and here's an estimate for a private school. If you have more than one student, it's obviously a different exercise and it's a different challenge for those of you that have lots of kids. It's one thing to send one or two kids to college. It's an entirely different thing to send three or four or five or six. Our record is 9. But it's important to do that. And the reason that I want you to do that is because that number is going to get your attention. Okay. And here are those numbers. And this is just the 4-year degree. We didn't put 5 1/4 at these public universities. So, UW, 127,000 for a high school senior. Well, a high school freshman is 139,000. That's just that 3% working. The cost increase every year. You can see then if you're going to go out of state, non-resident tuition is always higher at a public university. Of course, the privates, it's the same for regardless of where you live. But Stanford, as an example, is even more expensive. So that's a lot of money. And if you have multiple kids, it's a whole lot of money. So when you do this exercise, and you start working backwards, then it's going to be productive. But at least you're starting from the right place. And one of the things you may ask is it worth it? That's a lot of money. If I'm going to spend $1 million educating my kids, is it worth it? And a Harvard professor said, education trumps money and social prestige as a route to happiness. Educated people generally are happier people. Ben Franklin's credited with saying, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance. I think college is a great place for 18 to 22-year-olds to grow in a safe environment, to experience a little bit of freedom and personal responsibility, to be exposed to more diversity, people from all over the world in different countries and different states, and all sorts of diversity, whether it's geographic or ethnicity or religious or whatever it is. I mean, college is a great melting pot for the most part, but it's also a good place for them to learn and to gain skill in their chosen career. But it's not the path for everyone. Some of our students will go the military route. Some of them will go to trade school, because they have a passion, perhaps working with their hands. Others may take a gap year. They may not know what they want to do yet, and that's okay. But we're focusing tonight on, the path for most, and that's going to college. So as parents, we want the best for our kids, right? But we don't want to deplete our cash flow, our savings, our retirement, or take on too much student and parent debt. And you don't have to worry about taking on too much student debt because the system changed, and I'll show you that. Hope is not a strategy. Don't be like these guys, okay? You're here tonight. You're taking the first step. Or maybe for some of you, you're into the process. But like Jeff said, take action. Start figuring this stuff out. You're definitely not too early. I hear people all the time ask me, well, should I attend the webinar? Because I've got a 10th grader and it's 2 years until college, or I've got a 9th grader. And let me tell you, that time is going to go so quickly. But also from a financial perspective, as you're going to learn in about 2 minutes, the financial aid formula is derived off of your 10th grade income. So, it's certainly not too early to start planning if you have a 9th or 10th grader. It doesn't mean that hope is lost if you have a junior or senior. It just means that some of the doors of opportunity may be closed for you. Perhaps you'll have an opportunity with a younger child, but there still may be options. So how are you going to pay for it? There's other people's resources. My favorite, financial aid. We'll talk about that. Need-based aid, merit aid, private scholarships. There's resources of the child. They may work. They may have savings. They may have saved their birthday money gifts or have a job. And they can borrow a little bit. There's resources of the parents, assets, income, cash flow, loans. And the new category resources of the grandparents. And I'm not talking about the grandparent gift here. If I forget to mention the new strategy, please remind me at the end of the presentation, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about financial aid. Okay, if you can't afford to pay for college, there are programs to help you, but the bar is set pretty low. And I'm going to show you tonight exactly where that bar is set. But need-based aid is based on the family's income and assets. It's income and assets of the parents and income and assets of the students. Okay, merit-based aid is not based on income or assets. It's based on merit, talent. That can be your athletic scholarship, your academic scholarship, or a variety of other scholarships. I mean, we've seen colleges that have scholarships for volunteers or leadership or who knows? You know, it's amazing what a college can come up with if they want your student, or if your student automatically qualifies for these. The second step is to calculate your EFC. That stands for your expected family contribution, okay? And those of you with kids in college already know that this is the amount that you're expected to pay per child per year, okay? And there's two ways to calculate it. The federal methodology is the FAFSA form, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You may have heard of this. The institutional methodology uses a form called the CSS profile, okay? And they work much differently. I should mention that all CSS profile schools also use the FAFSA. Every college in the nation uses the FAFSA except Hillsdale and Grove City. Those schools do not accept federal funds. They don't use the FAFSA. They have their own form. But by and large, every other college or university or many trade schools and some schools in other countries accept the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The FAFSA opens on October 1st of the senior year. That's the first time that you'll fill it out. And every year thereafter, okay, for each subsequent future year of college. And so it's open right now. If you have seniors, okay, the clock is ticking. You want to fill it out early, particularly if you're a high need family. You know, if you have lower income, you know, you may qualify for some of the high need programs that are quota based. But if you dawdle, if you don't fill it out in time, you know, they might have given all that money away. So it always pays to be early, you know, soon after October 1st. I can tell you as a company, we attempt to file every family's FAFSA and CSS profile by November 1st. And for some, you know, we have to apply for October 15 deadlines. Each college and university has their own deadline. So even though the form opens on October 1st, the college's deadlines are going to vary by college and by how you're applying. So you can apply early, you can apply regular, and then some schools have what they call rolling admission. And so you can see all the deadlines on the college's website. Then you'll see these different types of admission, early action, early decision. You know, those are both early, typically November or December deadlines. Early decision is binding. So you would only apply early decision to a college if that's the dream school and you know you can afford it, meaning you're wealthy enough that you don't care if you pay full price, or you're needy enough that you know you're going to get a great financial aid award, but you sign a contract for early decision. Early action is not binding. Regular admission is not binding, okay? And a student should complete the FAFSA every year that they wish to receive financial aid, including loans. Okay, so you have to fill out the FAFSA if you want to access a student or parent loan. But many other colleges require that you fill out the FAFSA to get merit aid, okay? And there is a myth out there that I shouldn't fill out the FAFSA because I'm not going to qualify for anything. And you have to be careful with that because you might be wrong. I'll show you in a few minutes, you know, there's some real life examples where people were just wrong. They assumed that they wouldn't qualify for money and later found out that they would have. Or to protect your future, So let's say something happens after the first year. A parent loses a job, or you have some other adversity that drops your income or your assets, and now you really need to apply for financial aid. Some colleges will gap you a year if you're not current. They'll say, well, you didn't fill out the forms last year. We're going to make you wait a year, then you'll be eligible for need-based aid. There's really no reason not to fill out this form every year for every student starting in the senior year of high school. Most common mistakes? Well, it's a government form, and government forms just naturally seem to create mistakes. But the big ones are this. You don't report your retirement investments, okay? You don't put down your 401k, your 403b, or IRAs. None of that goes on there, okay? Qualified annuities don't go on there. Cash value of life insurance doesn't go on there. You don't report the value of a business with less than 100 employees. The FAFSA now tells you this, but before it just asked, what's the value of your business? And you were supposed to know. You were supposed to click on that little question mark icon if you have more than 100 employees. But the big difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile is for blended families, okay? If you're divorced, the FAFSA only looks at the custodial parent and the student. And custodianship is a time test, okay? And it's the time test for the 2 years prior to the date that academic term begins. So, if your student is looking at beginning college in 2021, 2019 was your base year, okay? If they start in 2022, then the income from 2020 this year is your base year. And so you have to look back those 2 years. They call it the prior, okay, year. And so this is an opportunity for many families. If the student splits time at each of the biological parents, if they can do that, and you have a high-income parent and a low-income parent, well, you may want to make sure that the student stays with that low-income parent 1 day more a year. That's all it is. There's no verification. They take your word for it. Obviously, in some circumstances, if there was a court order or something like that could be looked at. But typically, they're just going to ask you, okay, with whom did the student live with most? If you tell them that you split that 365th and a quarter day right down the middle, then it goes to financial test, okay? But very often, the custodial parent is not the parent that claims the student on the tax form, so they don't have to be the same. Okay, the CSS profile. This is the granddaddy of all financial aid forms. It's much, much lengthier than the FAFSA. It is much more intrusive, okay? The form does open on October 1st, and so there's about 400 private colleges that use this form. And you can tell 2 ways. You can Google CSS profile participating colleges and you'll get a list. Or you can go to the College Board because they administer the CSS profile, our beloved College Board. Or you can go to each college's website and they will tell you what forms they use. Again, the deadlines can be different by college and they can differ by type of admission. But here's the big difference. The CSS profile looks at much, much more, okay? They're going to look at home equity where the FAFSA doesn't. They're going to look at the value of a business of any size. And they're going to look at both biological parents and spouses if remarried. However, the income limitations, the bar that I told you, I would tell you where it's set, here's where it's set, okay? So at a CSS profile school, generally, these are your $60,000 to $85,000 a year schools, by and large. You can make upwards of $180,000 a year. At some schools, even $200,000, $225,000 a year. Now, when they talk about income, they're talking about adjusted gross income, which is off your tax return, plus any untaxed income. So they're going to add back in any HSA contributions or 401k contributions, but that's the number that they use. So some parents think, well, I make $150,000 a year, I'm not going to qualify for any need-based aid. Wrong. At these expensive schools, you may well be deep into need-based territory. We see some schools at that income level that will give you what they call a free ride. Okay, a free financial aid ride is no tuition and fees. You still got to pay room and board and books and supplies and all that other great stuff. But at some of these schools, if you have a $60,000 a year school, well, room and board at any school in the country runs between $10,000 and $14,000 a year, from cheapest to most expensive. So if a college is charging $60,000 or $70,000 a year, tuition is the balance for the most part. And, if they're going to offer free tuition or half tuition, that can be significant. Can be another way that a private college could end up being cheaper than a state university. So don't assume that you're going to pay sticker price. Now, the other bar for the FAFSA, that is about $65,000 adjusted gross income for an in-state public university. That's the Pell Grant phase out, okay, which is the high need government program. And so once you're above that, you tend to see mostly loans at public universities. So two different income bars, $65,000 at a public in-state school, let's call it $200,000 at a private college, okay? Also depends on assets too. Many schools that require the CSS profile also want to see your tax returns. W-2s, 1099s. They may have you fill out some other forms. They really enjoy making parents jump through hoops. And the reason I say that is because most of you are going to be able to link your FAFSA to the IRS. So when you go in and you're completing this, it's going to give the option. Do you want to link to the IRS? And it'll populate the income numbers. When a college sees that, they know that it's come from the IRS, but many of the private colleges are still going to ask to see your tax forms. Okay, there is a cost for the CSS profile. It's basically $25 for the form in the first college and $16 per school after that. Sometimes you can get a fee waiver. And so we always tell students, ask if a college will waive the application fee. Many do automatically. We just don't charge an application fee. I shouldn't say many. I said there are some that will, but many colleges will waive the fee because you asked. Some colleges will, waive the fee to encourage high-performing students to apply. And some colleges will waive the fee for high-need families. The CSS profile uses artificial intelligence. So if you're filling out the form and your income is really low and your assets are really low, it's automatically going to waive the fee for you. So how do you figure out? Before you get to college, right? You want to figure out what the net price is before you're actually applying. But that's the ultimate, that's the firm offer, is once you fill out the financial aid forms. But you can do what's called a net price calculator anytime. If you have a newborn, you can do a net price calculator. If you have a ninth grader, you can do a net price calculator. There's net price calculators on every college's website. The Department of Education began requiring that a few years back. And they're a step in the right direction, but they're not that accurate. Some are notoriously off. Sometimes you'll pull up the form and it's from 3 years ago. Well, okay, so they're using their cost of attendance from 3 years ago. But it is a good way to get a feel from a financial perspective of how much you'll have to pay. Besides being inaccurate, they won't tell you if you're close to an award, okay? And we've got the most accurate net price calculator in the nation. After this webinar or tomorrow, I'd be happy to email that to you. We have a list of resources, and that's one of them that we'll send to you. So you can hop on a college's website, or there's other net price calculators out there. The FAFSA has what's called a FAFSA forecaster. We have ours. But that can kind of give you an idea of what you're expected to pay. So basically, the published price minus your EFC, what you're expected to pay, that's called your demonstrated need, okay? That's how much financial aid you may qualify for. And why do I say may? Well, Here's where we get into some of the detail, and this is one of the things that I hope you remember most from this webinar, is how generally public universities and colleges treat need-based aid versus private colleges. So the first is the gap, or percent of need met. So you would think, hey, I filled out the calculator, this says what I'm expected to pay. Well, not so fast. Okay, some colleges will gap you, meaning they'll say, well, we'll only pay 82% of your need. That number is actually very common for state universities. So at a $30,000 a year school, there's an 18% gap. That's $5,400 that you can add to your EFC. Okay. When you get into the private college realm, typically they're going to meet a higher percentage of need. And when you get into the elite privates, the Ivies and the other elite privates, many of them will meet 100% of need. Many of them have no loan policies. So, if you have super high need, you can go to a $75,000 a year school cheaper than you can go to your local state university. So never assume that you're going to pay sticker price, but start investigating, take action, learn the averages. The second and really important thing is gift aid versus self-help. So gift aid is the good stuff. It's tuition discounts and scholarships and grants and money that never has to be repaid. It's essentially a reduction in the cost of college. Self-help is work study and loans. And work study is a beautiful thing. It's a federal program that's given away by each college, and it's a need-based program, okay? So if you don't qualify for need, then work study is not going to be an option. But one family might not qualify for need at a state university, but they might at a more expensive university. And I think that work study is a beautiful thing. I mean, we certainly have some advice on how and where to do your work study as a student that can open doors for more money to reduce the cost of college. But the other self-help is loans. And I'm spending my life's work to help parents not borrow any more than is possible, because you can really get in trouble if you borrow too much for college. Well, the colleges and universities, when they talk about financial aid, they're talking about all this stuff. So when they say, well, we'll meet 82% of your need, the question then should be, how much is gift aid versus self-help? Because at many public and state universities, once you get above that $65,000 mark for financial need-based aid, it's all loans. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen a college say, here's your student loan, here's your parent loan, we met your need. Yeah, you can borrow. Okay, well, I look at it differently. You want to call it financial aid, fine. I really call gift aid financial aid. That's kind of how we quantify it. At the public universities, like I said, it's flip-flopped. They don't want their students and they don't want their parents taking out huge loans, and they're much more generous if you qualify. And so these can be some great equalizers, and it's important. Just like I said, it's important to understand how different colleges quote the total cost of attendance. It's important to understand how different colleges meet need-based aid. These are all of your sources of financial aid. We can get through these in about 3.5 hours. But I'm not going to do that to you this evening. You may recognize some of these names. They've been around for a long, long time. The point is there's federal money, state money, and money from the colleges themselves. The director of financial aid gives it all away, okay? She's the one that packages the award. That's what it's called, packaging. So you fill out the financial aid forms, and her staff will crunch the numbers, and they'll make you an offer or an award, okay? We do want to talk a little bit about the Western Undergraduate Exchange, or the WUI program. So the WUI program is part of the WICHE site. WUI, WICHE, kind of sounds like an Eagles song, right? Ooh, all right. But this is a great program. So in theory, here's the way it works. If you're a resident of a Western state, the Western Undergraduate Exchange, so that's every state north and south of Colorado, including the Dakotas and the Northern Mariana Islands, in theory, you can go to a public university in any one of these neighboring states. Doesn't have to be a direct neighbor. South Dakota could go to Oregon. Oregon could go to New Mexico. But you can go to a public university in another college for 1.5 times in-state tuition, and that's about halfway between resident and non-resident tuition. So if you hit it right, it can be huge. You can save $6,000 to $8,000 a year in some of these programs, and their website is really good. I'll also put this in the email that we're going to send you, so you can just click on the link. But and they'll show you. They actually have a chart that shows the savings. However, there's some detail that you have to be aware of. Okay, not all majors are included in the program. So, for instance, at Arizona, it's only for chemical mining engineers. That's the most restrictive. However, in California, only about half the colleges are in the program. At Montana State, it's a merit scholarship. So some states interpret it differently, and there are quotas. So you need to be early if you're applying for WUI scholarships. But we've had students that have utilized this and ended up saving, $25,000 to $32,000 over the course of their career. So if your student is considering a public university in a neighboring state, this is a pretty cool program. The next thing to do is to minimize your EFC to the lowest legal and ethical level. And it's important that you pursue legal and ethical strategies. The financial aid system is just like the tax system. It's complex, it's murky, it's hard to understand. But if you understand it, you're going to get the money that your family's entitled to. And if you don't understand it, you're going to leave money on the table. So, what kinds of things can you do? I mean, we can talk about this in more detail on an individual basis when we do your free college planning analysis, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there's just a ton of things that you can do. Number one, here's a simple strategy. Pay your bills before you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile. That can be thousands of dollars in a swing between high and low, and that can make a difference. There's a lot more complex strategies. Parents ask me all the time, hey, I read this on the internet, or I heard about this strategy. And sometimes they work for some families and other times they don't. You have to figure out what you can do legally and ethically just to reduce your numbers so that by the numbers you qualify for more money. And so I mentioned the free college planning analysis. And this is a benefit for club members. What it is, it's a 1-hour meeting with me or one of my planners. It's technically a 45-minute meeting, but they always go an hour. Parents always have questions and we always want to provide the answers, but it's a true no charge, no obligation meeting. And here's the way it works. Let's say that you reach out and you say, hey, I'd like to do the free college planning analysis. We'll say, okay, great. Here's the page on our website. Please fill out the questionnaire. And this questionnaire will allow me to see you just as the colleges see you. So it's income and assets of the parent and income and assets of the student. And then we can tell you, we can identify those strategies that are going to be effective for your family. And we'll spend, the meeting talking about that. The first thing that we'll do is ask you a little bit, about your students, about the kids, so we get a feel, is your student a B student or do they have a 4.9 GPA? Are they a soccer star or would they just enjoy playing at D3? Those are important things to know. But once we look at the financial situation, we can tell you, okay, here's what you can do legally and ethically. We can identify opportunities at different colleges. So we're going to show you your EFC, both your federal and institutional, so you'll know right where you stand and what, if anything, can you do to improve your situation. It's almost always possible to improve your situation. There's very few families where we say, gosh, there's just nothing you can do. There's always something you can do. We can put colleges in competition, for a student or an athlete sometime. But it's also how we determine if we can help families beyond the free college planning analysis. So, in order for us to take a paying client, we have a $20,000 per student guarantee. You may have seen that on College Fit Finder's website, save up to $20,000 per college. It should, we should change it to say $20,000 per student. We have to be able to meet that guarantee. We have to be able to save you more money than you could find on your own. And so, by seeing your situation, we can typically figure that out. But let's say we can't. Let's say we say, you know what? We can't guarantee you $20,000. I can only help you save $12,000. Start writing, because I'm going to tell you how to do it. I may not be able to be there, to help you with it, but you can do it yourself. And we're going to cut through all of the noise and all of the stuff that you're reading, and it's going to say, hey, here's these 5 or 6 bullet points that you need to pursue. So nobody goes away empty-handed. It's a very powerful program. And the good news is, since we've just begun our relationship with the club, I'm attempting to do as many free college planning analysis myself, as opposed to one of our other planners, because, I told you that I had 2 kids in college 15 years ago. So, I'm the more experienced guy in college planning. That's putting it diplomatically, but it's not my first rodeo, and so you can certainly request that we have that meeting. And if you don't want to, don't. Just a couple more concepts here before we close for the evening. We want to talk about merit aid and the elite college. So I know a couple of you are thinking, you know what, my daughter's been valedictorian of her class since kindergarten. And that's my plan, Jay. Scholarships, baby. Or, my son's been the star soccer player of every team. And we know that that's the reward. That's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Just be aware that that doesn't necessarily apply to the elite colleges. And sure, we're talking the Ivies, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown. But it also covers a lot of private. So Pomona is a good example. Okay, they're not an Ivy, but they don't have merit aid. So none of those schools that I mentioned, none of the elite colleges have merit scholarships. You're either financial aid qualified or you're full pay. And it's important that now it's really important. If you have a student that might get into one of these colleges and she applies and she gets in, and there's hugs and there's high fives and there's tears, and then there's more tears when you realize there's no merit aid. You're either financial aid qualified or you're full pay. Now, the good news is that same student is going to get phenomenal awards from many other colleges, because obviously he or she is desirable for some reason, academic, athletic, all of the above. Just a quick note on student and parent loans. I mentioned this earlier, that you don't have to worry about students borrowing too much. It's true. Uncle Sam, I say, is now the sole lender. It's starting to change. So, boy, it's been a while. I want to say it was 16 years ago when the administration changed the whole student loan process and program. You may recall seeing young adults. You may be one of those young adults that, under the old system, borrowed $200,000 for their 4-year undergraduate degree and are now strangled by debt. It shows up on your credit report, and employers can see that. And it just really hurt the lives of a whole generation of students. And so the administration came in and said, no more. We're kicking all of you lenders out. And first and foremost, Sallie Mae. Sallie Mae has preyed on so many families. I'm not going to go there. I have to step down off my soapbox, but all of the companies, Nelnet and Great Lakes, they kicked them all out of the lending business, and the Department of Education became the sole lender. Now, you may say, well, Jay, I got a postcard in the mail from Sallie Mae, and it said they had 3% college money. Of course, when I turned the postcard over, it had that little box that's like credit card debt, 26.99 maximum annual interest rate. That's not a good deal. Some companies are coming back into the lending space, not dispersing government money, but private loans. SoFi is a great, reputable company that we've been working with since they were a young company. And of course, now they've grown beyond student loans. So there are other sources, but you know what? A student can't borrow. without a cosigner privately. Most students can't. Most students don't have a credit rating. So Uncle Sam's the sole lender. Here's the interest rates. Okay, so plus loans are parent loans, or grad plus loans or graduate student loans, and so the way I remember it is they both start with P, parent and plus. The interest rate right now is 5.3%, the lowest of all time, the lowest in the history of parent loans. Now, there is still a 4.236 origination fee, which is usury, but that's how they expanded the Pell Grant. And so I guess there's some good coming of it. It's just, I don't think they should be doing that on the backs of middle American parents, but I have to get off my soapbox again. You can tell I'm passionate about some of this stuff. So that money is there if you need it with a soft credit check. My advice is don't borrow any more than you need to. You have to be careful if you're looking at borrowing to send your kids to college, because you've got retirement coming up too. You've just got to be careful. The Stafford loans are student loans. Okay, both start with ST. And also the lowest rate of all time, 2.75%. That's not bad. And a 1% origination fee. That's not bad either. Okay. And so it's up to you. How expensive of a school can you afford? Are there going to be loans involved? We have some parents that say, yeah, I want my student to take out a student loan. I want them to have some skin in the game. Other families say no. We don't want our kids graduating with any debt. These interest rates are set once you take out a loan, but they for new loans, the rates change every year. So if we start to get into an inflationary environment, and by that I mean these loan rates are based on the 10-year U.S. Treasury note. And every year they set it at the May auction, and then there's a premium. I forget exactly what it is, 2-point-something%. And that's your student loan interest rate for that year. So if you borrow for that year, that's how much you're paying for the life of the loan. Standard life of the loan is 10 years. Okay. Pop quiz. I know you guys were told there wouldn't be any questions, but I have one. How much can you borrow as a freshman? A, B, or C? The answer for most of you is A, $5,500 a year. An independent student could borrow $9,500 or $4,000 more. But the most a student can borrow is $5,500 as a freshman, $6,500 as a sophomore, $7,500 as a junior, $7,500 as a senior. That's $27,000. It's capped at $31,000. So if they need more money for a semester abroad or a summer session, okay, $31,000 is the absolute most a dependent student can borrow on their entire 4 years of college. So they changed the system to protect the kids. There's other protections in there too. A student can never be victimized by a loan payment. You can reset or reduce your loan payment if your income is low. So let's say you're unemployed. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call your student loan servicing company and tell them, and they'll say, okay, you have no loan payment. Or let's say you're underemployed. Hey, I'm not making enough. Your loan payment can never be more than 15% of your disposable income. So if it is, you call your loan provider. Now, the reality is that may extend the term past 10 years, but it's not going to hurt the student on a monthly basis. They're not going to get in trouble because they can't make their student loan payment. There's also forgiveness options out there. So the Teach America program. Students that teach in certain areas can have some of their student loans forgiven on a vesting schedule. Same thing for medicine. There's different programs out there. More and more employers are paying off student loans or paying them off on a vesting schedule over a period of years, as a hiring incentive. So there are protections out there, but you don't want to borrow any more than you have to. And so our message is the only family that should pay full price for college is the family that so chooses. If you don't want to pay full price for college, take action. Start figuring some of this stuff out, start calculating your costs, do the free college planning analysis. That is going to give you a giant head start on your college planning process, figure out what's going to work for your family. Here's areas of opportunity that I want to mention, okay? These are kind of the categories where we see families being able to reduce the cost of college. We kind of touched on the students of divorced parents and the blended families because of perhaps the differences in household income or assets. We talked about private colleges giving much more gift aid, now upwards of $180,000 a year. It can vary by the college. Business owners, independent contractors, real estate owners, those are all tax strategies. So now we're utilizing the tax code to reduce the cost. So, that can be huge for families that say, hey, my student isn't the best academic student, doesn't have the best grades. He's not the greatest soccer player, but I've got a business. Well, you've won the lottery when it comes to paying for college because of the tax benefits. Student athletes. So that can lend a unique aspect to the application process. If the coach knows about your student, your player, and they want that player, they can walk right down the hallway to admissions or financial aid and say, hey, make this happen. Okay, they can sweeten that award for you. It's important that the student is choosing the college for all the right reasons, not just to play soccer. Sometimes soccer players get enamored, with that. That's what I like. One of the things I like so much about College Fit Finder is they can assess the complete fit. Other opportunities, 2 or more students in college at the same time, completely changes the financial aid calculation. 3 or more at the same time, completely changes it even more. 2 kids in college at some colleges can go to school for 10% more than the price of 1. So, yeah, that's crazy, right? Parents of high achieving students, academic, high achieving students, college is always like that. There's always money there. Coach isn't going to have to worry about keeping you eligible. You're going to be an inspiration to the other students and an example, the other kids on the team. And I know we think of colleges as these giant, impersonal, money-making machines, and they are. But they can also be compassionate. Many times I've seen a college reach out and lend a helping hand to families that have heartbreaking situations, widowed parents or other special circumstances. Sometimes colleges will go out of their way to help families in their time of need. If you find yourself in this category, we should definitely talk offline. So in conclusion, every family can save, okay? But you'll do it differently. You need to find out which strategies are going to work for your family. Your student might not be merit qualified at one school, but they might be at another, okay? The same thing for athletic scholarships, or let's just call it money for playing soccer, okay? I've seen D3 academic scholarships that started to 3.0, okay? Well, that's a tool for a coach to use because he's prohibited from offering athletic scholarships at D3 schools, but sometimes the money can be there and sometimes it can be significant. You either qualify for need or you don't, right? Well, we know that can vary by college too. And then lastly, tax strategies and cash flow are beyond the scope of this presentation. But here's the bottom line. Earlier, I said, if you understand the system, you're going to get what you're entitled to. Colleges have 2 prices, one for the informed parent and another for the uninformed parent. If you don't have a college plan, the college is happy to design one for you. It's not going to be as attractive as the one that you design for yourself. If you are proactive and if you take action, not only will you save money, but your stress level is going to go down because you're going to stop worrying about a lot of this stuff that doesn't even affect you. It's going to be like, okay, that's a relief to know that we don't have to worry about that stuff. We can focus on the strategies that are going to work for our family. This is our contact information. Again, we'll put all of these links and websites on the email. We'll also put the college visit checklist